Which leads me to ask, are you pulling this shit just now or forever? I mean, do you have a problem, like some little fucking girl, or some Somali who can't process that there's no food where they live? Or are you just fucked up temporarily because you're temporarily fucking stupid?
Are you long business or short business?
What's the difference?
Welcome to Kyle Anthony's UFC betting show. I am Kyle Anthony, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the prediction show for UFC on ESPN plus 26. Paul Felder versus Dan Hooker. We've got two free plays that we're going to talk about on this card. We're coming off of our first losing night in 2020. Never feels good. We have been having a phenomenally profitable UFC betting season so far. We are 12-5 overall in all the plays that I have released. 7-2 to my clients on Wagertalk. Have two plays there as well right now for purchase. Take a look if you're interested in that. But doesn't feel good when you do lose. I get it. I know. Even when we're on the hot streak there and, we 5-0 and then went 4-1 and people saying, hey, congratulations. And that does feel good. Of course, that feels good. You want to give yourself a little bit pat on the back if you're capping things right and you feel good about the plays overall. But I always say there is no time to celebrate when we do win. It's research, get the videos out, get the, dive into that research, get the content going, keep moving forward into the next event. There are so many events in UFC, as you all know. I feel like there's, one every weekend, which is awesome because it presents more betting opportunities for us that cap UFC. So with that being said, the only final thing I want to talk about before we get into the two plays is that me and Minty Bets will have our show back on. It should be out on Thursday. And we're going to talk about the Deontay Wilder versus Fury fight. We're going to get into all of that and also some UFC talk as well. So we're going to talk about Fury Wilder, some UFC, combat sports show, going to be on Wagertalk. Definitely check that out. And appreciate everybody who likes and subscribes to this channel as well. Also comments. I appreciate everybody. It's a growing community down there in the comment section, and I do appreciate everybody. Also, you can follow me at Kyle Anthony UFC on Twitter. I answer as many messages and comments as I can. So let's get to what we are here for. First play we're going to talk about is the main event of the evening between Paul Felder and Dan Hooker. Right now you've got Dan Hooker minus 145 roughly, and you've got Felder who is plus 120. And this is an interesting fight here. We're going to go down, like I always talk about, we're going to go down 3 of the past fights for each fighter, see what we see what we're, if we're able to piece something together, if one fighter can expose something of the other fighter, is one fighter, increasing, decreasing, skill set wise, whatever's going on there. So we'd like to dive into these, go over these quick, wrap it up at the end with our plays, our thought, and move on to the next play. So first thing we're going to talk about here is Dan Hooker. 3 fights ago, Dan Hooker fought Edson Barboza. Now, this was a very interesting fight. I did bet Barboza here, and the biggest reason for me here that I did like Barboza was because Hooker likes to leave space between him and his opponent. And that's something where you've got somebody like Edson Barboza who has probably the quickest kicks within the UFC, some of the hardest strikes, coming out of nowhere. The way he's able to just really quick draw some of those strikes is really impressive, and he needs that space. And that's something really that Hooker was leaving to Edson Barboza to kind of dictate that pace. And early on, I thought that Hooker did a decent job, kind of moving around the cage a little bit. But when they stood toe to toe, in that distance, in a basically a kickboxing distance, which Hooker is comfortable with. He definitely has kickboxing credentials, and he's definitely got a good stand-up game. But you've got Edson Barboza there, who was just picking him apart, working those leg kicks. And remember, I'm going to go back into the leg kicks, but working those leg kicks, hammering Hooker, and was not really able to do anything else. Hooker was trying to really work some combinations, move around the cage a lot, but really Barboza was just hammering the leg kicks, working the body kicks, and at that point there, I felt like Hooker was not really able to really pick up where the strikes were coming from. So in that fight there, you had a really nice, win for Barboza, who had some tough losses, comes out there and really a kickboxing match, which I thought was something that they didn't implement any other strategy there. You had Barboza go out there and get the victory. 3rd round knockout against Dan Hooker. 2 fights ago, he fought James Vick. This one here, you've got James Vick, who is Mr. Glass Jaw here. I mean, a guy who has talked so much trash, really was, starting to gain a little bit of ground there, and has been knocked out by Gaethje, knocked out by Dan Hooker. So not too much really here to talk about overall in this fight, because it was a short-lived fight. The one part that I will say is that Vick was landing. I mean, it was a very short fight, but Vick actually landed a couple nice shots early in that spot. But again, his chin did not hold up. It was a big shot by Hooker, dropped him, ended in an early finish in that 1st round, was a knockout victory for Dan Hooker. And then most recently, which is a very interesting fight that I thought that, when I rewatched it, very interesting fight against Ally Quinta. Now, this was a fight here where, Ally Quinta, he's got striking. I'm not saying he doesn't have striking, but to me, it's almost a brawler mentality than it is very technical. And you've got somebody like Dan Hooker, very technical striker. He's pretty rangy with his strikes overall. Stuffed a lot of the takedowns that came from Ally Quinta. Ally Quinta tried a little bit, but a lot of them were some sloppy outside shots, because really you didn't really see much of him really able to really gauge that range between him and Dan Hooker. And that's almost kind of what you saw with Iaquinta when he fought Cowboy. I mean, he pretty much Cowboy, and Hooker did the same thing. It was kind of stay outside, work the combinations. Iaquinta is willing to take shots. He's a tough kid, but willing to take shots coming in. He's looking for the big shot, looking to push forward. And the big thing here also is the volume. He just was pouring on the volume throughout that entire fight between him and Ally Quinta. And Ally Quinta, again, took some big damage, wasn't able to do too much, and even Hooker using his range really well. But overall, this was a fight that, I mean, it was a nice victory for, and a nice opportunity for Hooker to now jump into where he's about to fight Paul Felder. But this was one where Ally Quinta just seemed well overmatched at this point. Striking-wise, could not get it to the ground. This was a unanimous decision for Dan Hooker. And then you've got on the other side, you've got Paul Felder. Paul Felder, 3 fights ago, he fought Mike Perry. Now, this was a very interesting fight because again, everyone probably has seen this fight, but when you rewatch it with other fighters in mind, I always think that is just a really great, when you're watching tape, it's great to always, of course, have the other fighter in mind. And this is a fight here where against Mike Perry, where I am not high on Mike Perry at all. I mean, Mike Perry, he's 2-4 out of his last 6. He's looked, he never has been elevating, kind of sticking to that same big punch, looking for the one big knockout, and, doesn't really do too much. Very simplistic combinations, big 1-2 shots. That's kind of it. He's a barbarian when he goes in there. Tough kid, but again, it's just, he doesn't really put too much together. But in this fight here, you had Felder, and Felder, he is really known for his spinning back fist. I mean, he's known to pull those out. I mean, even when he's in the middle of being hit, he's able to just kind of wing it and throw it, and he hits it with pretty solid accuracy. I would say that he's pretty solid with that overall. But in this fight here, early in that first round, Felder broke his arm. Now, this was something where even watching it, and again, knowing that it was going to happen and going through and watching it, you see how tough Felder is. I mean, he was going through there and he was still pushing forward. He was still laying some big shots, pushing forward, and it was just a war. I mean, every round, I would say, was pretty close. I mean, it wasn't, even, a lot of it was jabs and, a couple kicks and some jabs from Felder because he was trying not to use the arm that was broken. He kept pushing forward with it. I think it was more his forearm. Kept pushing forward with it, kept throwing a couple shots here and there, but obviously that is going to really hinder his performance overall. So it's kind of tough to take much away from that because I'm so low on Mike Perry, and Felder losing to him in a split decision, tough to take away from that. But overall, Mike Perry did get that victory in a split decision against Paul Felder. 2 fights ago, and it's interesting how they do have 2 of the same opponents on the last 3 fights. You've got Paul Felder fought James Vick. this was an interesting fight here where, James Vick has a 6-inch reach advantage on Paul Felder. Now, Dan Hooker has a very large range as well, but this was a fight here where I thought it was very impressive how Felder, very early in that fight, and again, it's, Vick, I guess the jury is still out on Vick. He's got good boxing, has some range, but his chin is just, you tap that thing, he goes down. So, but I thought it was very impressive how Felder was really able to gauge that range quickly. He was able to really just find his spot, really able to bounce inside, bounce outside, lunge forward, and you see a lot with Felder is that pressure. He's able to really put some pressure on, but he mixes it up very well. And I think that's something very interesting that he could use in a fight against Hooker. The way that he fought Vick is kind of go inside, really nullify that range, and then bounce outside, do what he needs to do. And this was another spot here where you saw leg kicks working very, very well. Felder throws everything with a lot of power behind it, especially that spinning back fist, but overall he throws a lot of power behind it, and he was really chipping away. And pretty much from that whole fight, early in that fight, Felder badly hurt Vick, and Vick was able to come kind of out of it, and, the fight continued to go on. But overall, in that entire fight, you saw how much Felder was just hammering down those leg kicks, mixing it up very well. So working the leg kicks, and then working the pressure, and then working his combinations up top, level changing kicks. I mean, he was really mixing up very well. Vick ended up losing that fight. It was a unanimous decision victory for Paul Felder. And then most recently, he fought Edson Barboza. Now, this was one here where I think is the most important fight of all of them that I've talked about, all of them that I've watched for this fight. Now, reason really being is, one, they both have fought the same guy very recently. 3 fights ago was for Hooker. Last fight, it was for Felder. But this was something where, again, kickboxing, pretty much kickboxing distance and good striking between the two of them. Thought that he looked pretty well, but it was impressive that Felder was standing toe-to-toe, because in my mind, when you think of Felder, you think of a little bit slower when it comes to his striking. He's got some quick attacks, but a little bit slower with his combinations. And you've got somebody like Barboza who, again, like I was saying before, can really just pour out that output when he's ready to do it. And he's very creative with his striking, very dynamic, very versatile with his kicks. And I thought that Felder fought really, really well for the way things were going. And even more is that I thought that it was a great striking bout overall, but again, it came down to the leg kicks. It was just another theme with both of them actually throwing leg kicks a lot. That's something Barboza does a lot. It's something that Felder does a lot. You also see Hooker now has really kind of utilized that into his arsenal of weapons. And this was something here where I thought it was very interesting that multiple times in this fight, you saw Felder was capable of checking the leg kick from Barboza. Now, that's not something very easily done, where you've got a guy like that Barboza, again, that's able to really fire those leg kicks hard, just overall, just any kick. But it's very hard for you to really pick up where those are coming from, because the way that Barboza throws them with not much, he disguises his kicks very well. He doesn't really, load up and fire the shot. It's more right from his stance. He's able to just, rotate his hips, fire off the leg kick, fire off the body kick, whatever it may be. And I thought that Felder fought extremely well against Barboza in a match where Hooker really was dominated, in my opinion, in that fight for, it was a third round knockout. And this was a fight here where it was a split decision, very close, but split decision. I thought that the way that Felder picked up the attacks from Barboza, and again, most recently, I think that's very impressive for Felder. Felder went out there and got the split decision victory. So with that all being said, now go over both of these guys here. Now you've got on the other side, of course, you've got Hooker. He's got good boxing overall, good kicks, good punch accuracy. I think that he's very efficient with his punches. He's definitely the kind of guy that always has, his volume's pretty good, but overall his landing is very good as well. And I like that he trains with Israel Adesanya. Now, that is something that is not going to be the end-all be-all, but that's going to help. You know, you've got one of the world's best mixed martial artists right now, young, they're both hungry and working together, working strategies. That's got to help you overall when you're constantly sparring with a guy like that. That has to help you. Obvious also the fact that he's got a 5-inch reach advantage over Felder. That's going to help him as well too. I think that's a very, very important spot overall that stacks up against Felder. But if you look at the Felder side, now the big part for me here is really going to be the leg kicks. Now I keep bringing it up here, but the thing for me here is that yes, Hooker uses them. Yes, Felder uses them. But not only does Felder use them, but he is very good at checking them, like I was saying with Barboza. But Hooker does not really check leg kicks. And he leaves that leg out there to be hit. And you saw against Barboza, a guy who he just kind of left that leg out there. He never was checking it. He never really moved around. He kept the same stance. And if that to me is an absolute path to victory, that you're going to see somebody like Felder who's going to be patient and going to be looking to hammer that front leg kick, slowing down Hooker, giving him opportunities to then move forward with that pressure. I think that's a very, very huge weapon that you're going to see Felder use. And not only that, you've also got Felder where he's great in the clinch. Now, when he's inside and he's in the clinch, he's able to frame the body well. He's able to throw those slippery elbows where, I mean, he comes hard with those elbows. You've seen him in multiple spots where he's able to land big elbows, cause big damage. I think that is enormous also as well. And the fact that he's got great cardio. He has proven over and over again that he has great cardio, that he's able to not only throw all of his weapons with a lot of force behind it, but he keeps the cardio going forward. So that all together, mixing in with the pressure, mixing in with how he cuts off the cage, I think is also impressive. And how good he is at closing that distance. So the pressure, closing the distance, leg kicks, in the clinch, I think there's a lot of really great things that he brings to the table compared to Dan Hooker. And I think another thing that I think sticks out to me a lot is the fact that over the last 5 years, Felder has lost 2 times. And both of those times over those 5 years was against Mike Perry that we talked about, which was a broken arm. So you can't really fault him there. And then even prior to that, further back, was against Francisco Trinaldo, and that was a doctor stoppage. So you've got fights where he has been injured, he has been hurt, and these are the way that he's losing fights. Otherwise, he has fought very hard. He's got a great skill set. And I think in this spot here, you've got Felder, who's plus 120. I like this spot here. To me, I would cap this at very much of a pick'em, maybe, you know, a minus 110, minus 115, somewhere in there, this range. I like getting the plus money on Felder here. I do not like, obviously, where this is being held on the home soil for Dan Hooker. I understand that, but I think this is a spot where you're going to see a lot of the pressure, and some of the things that Hooker's unable to do are things that Felder is really capable of doing. I like the pushing forward here. I like the fact that what he's going to be able to do and lay it on him, land some big shots, and he's shown that he's very capable of getting inside those range, getting inside the range of a fighter and working combinations. I like Paul Felder here at plus 120. That will be one of my free plays for UFC on ESPN plus 26. My second play will be between Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Yan Shonan. This is a fight here where it was another one here that I looked at, and I just, as soon as I started diving into this fight, I liked it. I thought it was a great opportunity here for the fighter that I'm going to be betting. So let's get into it. Not going to dive into these too much here overall, but you've got Yan, you've got Karolina. So I guess we'll first go over Karolina Kowalkiewicz. First thing we're going to talk about here is 2 fights ago, she fought Michelle Waterson. This was a fight here that I actually attended. Great fight overall, but this was one here where Karate Hottie, you know what, she's got a lot to offer, to say the least, but to also say that, you know what, she's actually adopted this wrestling, and she's really been capable of showing that she's got some good force, she's got some strength, that she doesn't just have to stay on the outside and work her kicks. And you saw that Karolina was landing some nice shots early, and then Waterson went to the takedowns, and it was a clean sweep overall for these two, where you saw that Michelle Waterson got a 30-27 across the judges. to get that victory. The fight before, her most recent fight against Grasso, and this one was a fight that I thought that would be possibly a good spot for Carolina to really work from the outside, work her combinations, work her kickboxing. She has nice kickboxing. And this again was just a flat out dominating performance by Alexa Grasso. She just really went out there, did her thing. Again, getting involved in some of the clinching, getting involved from the outside, outlanding her, outstriking her. There was a lot that I think I took away from watching that fight that really showed that Carolina at this point, she's struggling in certain spots that I thought that maybe she could look a little bit better. And rewatching them, I did not like a lot of what I saw from her. And then the other side, you've got Shonan. She fought Kondo, Siri Kondo. That was 2 fights ago. And this was just a dominating performance from her. And the thing that you see from her is where she's got big pressure. She pushes forward, and she is not scared to really take one to give one. And that's something that you see her, she's been hit, and she's able to keep moving forward. And she's fought some nice some girls with some nice striking ability, but I really like what she was doing in these 2 fights that I saw against Kondo and against Angela Lee. I thought both of them were really, really great showings, that she has this tenacious forward movement, and it's almost overwhelming for some of the fighters where she does not have that knockout power, but she almost presents it in that way where she has a big volume, not scared to move forward, and she did it against Kondo overall, high volume coming out of her. I thought that her boxing looked really good, and just the utilization of her pressure, I thought was she's picking good spots, moving forward, closing the distance, and landing a bunch of shots, backing out, and then doing the same thing over again. So I thought she looked really great there. She got the victory against Kondo, also got the unanimous decision victory against Angela Lee. Angela Lee in that fight was a tough fight for her. She was in some tough spots. Angela Lee has been with, big time elite fighters, won some, lost some, but she has been there with some top fighters. And you've got Shonan, she was able to go in there, and that first round was kind of close, but you did see in the end of the one round where she almost got choked out. I mean, there was a spot where Shonan, I think, got over aggressive, and I kind of exposed an opportunity for Lee to go in there and get the get the submission opportunity there, get the submission attempt there, but she was able to, I think, kind of reevaluate it going later into the fight, was able to get a unanimous decision victory, and Shonan did get that win. So with that all being said, looking at these 2 here, now you've got Kovacevic, obviously, it's a good kickboxing that she's got going on there. She's always very relaxed, and she's calm. And she's got good footwork. She can circle the cage a little bit, she moves around a little bit. But the big thing for me here is really going to be the level changing strikes that you have from Shonan, the way she has the pressure, the relentless pressure, and somebody like Carolina really, really needs to have that space. I mean, this is a fighter here where it's going to be very tough for her to outstrike her opponent when they're in that close. She's not very good. She doesn't have much strength. That's something that I think I would give also to Shonan as well. And also the fact that the range of striking that Shonan has. I love the way that she throws a punch. And she doesn't just throw from the square position and throwing a strike here. She throws very much, and again, I use her a lot in these conversations where I talk about people who are rangy, is like Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes is so great at, yes, she has a reach, but she's able to fully extend her arm, moving her shoulders with her punch to give her those extra inches of reach to her advantage. And she does that very well. And that's something that I think where Nunes is far away, opponent believes, hey, this is a good spot. And then she could throw a great barrage of punches that almost doesn't seem like it would be able to hit you, and it does. And that's something that I think Shonan, it looks like the way that she punches, she's very similar to that. So she has the power where she's able to really, or the volume and the heavy strikes to land. But I think the heavy pressure mixed with utilizing some of her range, I think is very, very important for her to smother up that space, not give much opportunity for Carolina, and really pour it on her overall. And having the vulnerability of the takedowns that Carolina also has shown that she is has not shown much. really is not a great thing. So it also gives another path to victory for Shonan here to really go out there. The price tag on Shonan, you're getting it anywhere, minus 220, minus 260 I've seen. I'm getting it roughly around the minus 230, 240 range. And you know what? I think it's worth it. I think it's great price on Shonan here, as well as the fact that you've got Kovacevic that since the brutal knockout that she took against Jessica Andrade, since that knockout, she hasn't won a round. There's been 2 fights, and the ones we just went over, she lost 30-27. So really in 3 fights, she hasn't won 1 round in the UFC. So that and then she's had some close fights, further back behind that. So there's just a lot that really goes against Carolina here. So I like the price on this. I think the price is good, a little bit higher up, but I think that this is a great spot to take her. I think this is going to be a great name for Shonan to get this victory off of Kovacevic and really kind of catapult her a little bit more into the even higher name fighters that are out there in UFC. So that is my other play. Yan Shonan will be my other free play. So those are my 2 free plays for UFC on ESPN plus 26. We have Paul Felder at plus 120. We've got Yan Shonan at minus 240, somewhere around there. It depends where you guys are all getting it. Those are my 2 free plays. We'll have the show with Minty Bets out on Thursday. That will be talking about Fury Wilder and some other UFC plays as well. Definitely check that out. Give it a thumbs up if you like this content. Always appreciate it. Subscribe if you've not yet done so, as well as definitely comment down below. And a lot of people commenting on the last video. Love the feedback. I love the conversations, the banter, your thoughts, because again, we are all on the same team here trying to beat those bookies. It is still knock out your bookie season. Do not forget that. And that is it. We will see you on the Bet Review show out probably on Sunday. And this is Kyle Anthony's UFC Betting Show, and I'll see you next time.